2021 was a weird year for pitching, but we actually feel better about the position now. Let's talk about it next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5. As always, make sure to follow and stream us on Spotify. Today is Tuesday, November 9th. I am Frank Sanfel, joined by Scott White. And let's take a look at the top 10 starting pitchers from this past season in 5x5 Roto. Start with these top 5. Max Scherzer, Walker Buehler, Zach Wheeler, Julio Urias, and Corbin Burnes. Scott, I want to talk to you about Julio Urias because the Dodgers basically took the kids' gloves off, still just 25 years old, and he broke out. He led the majors with 20 wins. Are you buying what we saw from Julio Urias this past season?
Mostly, yeah, because the biggest hurdle I felt like Julio Urias had to clear was just in terms of workload. Well, when would the year come when the Dodgers treated him like a conventional starting pitcher from beginning to end? And it turns out it was this year. They gave him more than 185 innings. You can't ask for much more than that. And, another name that you mentioned there, Walker Buehler, was kind of parallel stories for both Buehler and Urias, and that we wondered if they were capable or if they'd be permitted to take on the kind of workload needed to really live up to the high end. In Buehler's case, what he was already being drafted as, and Urias's case, what we thought he could be. Now, both Urias and Buehler aren't as good at accumulating strikeouts as the other pitchers that we plan to draft in that range, but they've proven that they're good at keeping runs off the board. Like run prevention is something they excel at beyond strikeouts. And so I have them both, and of course Buehler, but Urias, but 2 in my top 12 for next year, actually top 10.
Let's talk about Corbin Burnes, who finished 5th overall at the position. He was first among qualified starting pitchers in K- walk rate, and he was first among qualified starting pitchers in swinging strike rate. He gets a lot of ground balls. He had great control this past year. He throws a cutter 95 miles per hour. He uses that pitch like 50% of the time. Corbin Burnes is awesome. The problem, Scott, is can we trust the workload going into next year? I think he's in that conversation for SP1 overall.
Well, I certainly pitch for pitch. I think he's proven himself to be the best other than Jacob deGrom. 163 FIP this past year. I mean, that's a mark only deGrom can match. And the xFIP was a little tamer, 230 xFIP for Corbin Burnes, which was still more than 50 points higher than the number 2 qualifier. So yeah, I mean, he is dominant, and he maintained it basically over the course of the season. 167 innings. Obviously, you want more from your ace than that. But even more about him adding to that total is, can he bounce back from that total? Because, he had never even thrown 60 innings as a major leaguer before. He'd been used in relief previously. So that's a big jump in innings for Corbin Burnes. Will he battle through injuries this year as a result? I hope not, but you don't really know until you see it play out. So that's why Burnes is only 4th for me going into next year.
6 through 10 at starting pitcher this past season was Robbie Ray, Gerrit Cole, Kevin Gausman, Adam Wainwright at 40 years old, and Brandon Woodruff. And Scott, I'll throw 2 names your way. You could talk about both of them. Robbie Ray had the breakout season of basically all breakout seasons, right? Out of nowhere, trusted his stuff. Best control that we've ever seen from him, threw the ball much harder than we've ever seen before. And then Gerrit Cole is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. He's still great, still put up an awesome season, but we kind of have this sticky substance situation looming in the back of our mind. So how much do you trust the Robbie Ray breakout, and who's the real Gerrit Cole at this point?
So Robbie Ray, there's nothing in the underlying numbers that really makes you doubt too much. And it was always an issue of efficiency for him, always an issue of too many walks. 2.4 walks per 9 is just a mark I never thought we'd see from him. And of course, it allowed him to pitch deeper into games and to see his massive strikeout potential fully realized with a Cy Young caliber season. So, anytime you see a guy breaking out in his 30s, it's right to be skeptical of it. But it was, if the walk rate is legit, then basically every aspect of Ray's season is legit too. So I have him actually 9th, 1 spot ahead of Julio Urias for next year. Gerrit Cole, he was kind of the poster child for the foreign substance crackdown. His spin rates dropped when that started. His production dropped too. But then He had a 6-start stretch from mid-August to mid-September with a 1.35 ERA. There was a 15 strikeout effort during that stretch. His spin rates were back up. It looked like he fixed things. Then he had a rough 3-start stretch to end the season, a rough start in the playoffs. Now, he was dealing with a hamstring injury then that seemed to impact his delivery. So all of this is meant to say that, even though Gerrit Cole's second half numbers weren't that great, really his numbers from the time the crackdown began, it was more complicated than that. The hamstring injury played a role. And I think it's still safe to consider Cole one of the top 2 pitchers in fantasy, certainly based on his track record. He may not be as far ahead of the pack as he used to be, but he's still really good.
For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, your smart speakers, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. We'll be back again on Thursday morning. Bye-bye.